Good evening from the Gail Lemron Auditorium on the campus of Embry-Riddle. Welcome to the Embry-Riddle Speaker Series. I'm Mark Bernier, the moderator for tonight's event. Tonight, the final installment of Left to Right, a review of the presidential election that happened last night. And the winner, it's Trump. Now, tonight we'll talk with Ellen Ratner and John Leboutillier, both from the Fox News Channel, and we'll take your questions. Thank you for being with us here. It is my great privilege and pleasure to introduce from the Talk Media News Service and the Fox News Channel, from the left, Ellen Ratner.
Who was ahead of the game.
And on a command performance, reunited, former member of Congress. He is a columnist for The Hill, and he's on the Fox News Channel's Political Insider Sunday nights at 7:30, John Leboutillier. Where do we even begin?
I'll tell you where we begin. We have to praise Ellen Ratner. Last June, now I met Ellen coming here on February 1st and liked her immediately. She's the best. And she nicely offered to help me get credentials if I wanted to go to the Republican convention in Cleveland, which was July. So in June,
my hometown.
In June, I started communicating again with Ellen. And she said, I'll get you credentials. And by the way, she said, Trump is going to win. June.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Bob Ney says he was the first. Bob Ney is a former member of Congress, also from Ohio, who talks with us. He spoke with us today, and he said in January he predicted a Trump victory.
That's true, he did. He did it before me, but we both did it.
So somehow through the exit polling and other means, all the television networks seemed to think that Hillary was going to win last night. They started talking about it in the morning shows, except I think for Fox, NBC, CBS, ABC, every other net, Bloomberg. They all said, yeah, this thing will probably wrap up. We'll probably know Hillary's won it by 11:15, and it didn't happen. Is this mass lying by exit pollers, or what? What happened?
Well, I think people got out. This is what I always said was going to happen, that they got into that voting booth. They said, I really don't like her. I think I want a change. They pushed the lever, made the X or whatever you do. I filled in a round little thing. And they said, and then the exit pollers would say who'd you vote for, and they'd lie. Mm-hmm. Just like Brexit.
Because they didn't want to be harassed, hassled.
And they don't want people to know they voted for Donald Trump. I voted for Hillary Clinton, that is absolutely true. But they didn't want people to know they were voting for Donald Trump. Yeah,
I was told many times by the lady in the front row, do not believe all this polling. The American people will speak, and they did. So there you have it. Were you surprised, John, because in our many conversations weekly, you had suggested that possibly Donald Trump would lose and he would be the reason he lost?
Yep. All along, for years, I've thought the country is in a revolution. The show that I'm on, Pat Caddell, Doug Schoen, and I, Political Insiders, that's the big thing we've been preaching, that things are much worse in this country than you know, and the voters know it, that we're headed in the wrong direction. And we've been saying it for 5 years on that show. Trump came along. Trump is a big fan of our show, big friend of Pat, and often echoed many of the things we said on the show. But as the campaign got going, I felt Trump was an imperfect messenger for change, that he stumbled over things. He'd have been better off if he'd just kept his mouth shut for the last 5 months and let the whole thing be Hillary. It was a disaster. Now, I got to say to everybody here, if we really look at this thing objectively, and none of you and us, we're all too close to it. You all listen to Mark, you love politics. I'm the same way, Ellen's the same way. And we don't see things that are so obvious. Number one, what party would ever nominate a candidate who's under criminal investigation by the FBI? That's a disqualifier to run for president. Had they picked either Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden, we'd be sitting here today probably talking about them winning this race. Now, this is not a big blowout by Trump, you know. Hillary has won, as of tonight, the popular vote. She's ahead nationally by 200,000 votes. And in the electoral map, he did win. not overwhelmingly. He's in the high 200s. It's not like a mandate type of thing. And in all the states that he won them, but he won them very narrowly. Very narrow. The polling wasn't that far off. This is not huge. The polling and the results are in the margin of error.
All right. Did the James Comey story hurt Hillary? In the final analysis, they'll be talking about this for 100 years, but did Comey and the FBI cause her to lose the election, or was it lost weeks ago?
Well, I don't know whether it cost the election, but it certainly didn't help her. It certainly did not help. And frankly, those of us from the outside look like he was trying to save his job, both times. Both the time he wrote the first letter in July, then when he reopened the investigation, then he wrote the letter again. And so I think that he's a guy that wants to keep his job, and he wants to please whoever he thinks he needs to please.
Well, but that's a separate issue from did it cost Hillary. Now, we got to look. Hillary, on that Friday 2 weeks ago when Comey released the letter, when he wrote the letter to Congress, if I remember right, she was ahead in the Real Clear Politics average around 6 points. And the letter comes out on a Friday, and she has a horrible week, and Trump has a good week. Trump has some discipline on the stump, stays out of the story, lets Hillary hurt herself with this thing. And it is such a close race. I have to think this could have cost her maybe several states worth. It's a close race, this thing.
Trump's people did control him so that he didn't become the story, that he let her become the story. Because we used to call Trump the leaky faucet. It's a mental health term when you tighten somebody up and they still leak.
Kellyanne Conway gets credit for a lot of that, yes?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And her stock went up. I mean, she was
I think
always...
Kellyanne, I think the kids, from what we hear, have great say with their father. I think Ivanka, and I have to say, this makes me uncomfortable that we're talking about the President-elect of the United States and how somebody can keep him in check. This is not good. He should keep himself in check. We shouldn't be saying, which person keeps him from screwing things up?
We're going to talk about the Senate and the House races. As you know, this is the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, since 1928 we're one party? No?
I don't know why people say that. First of all, let's go back to 2008. Obama wins, and he has the House and Senate.
It's the first time the Republicans have...
No, it's not. George W. Bush had a Republican House and Senate for 6 years. Okay?
Oh, okay. So the Fox people,
they're
they're
crazy.
wrong.
I don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's Fox. That's the problem.
Okay. Well, this is a real chance to correct what people say are some of the wrongs of the prior administration. Let's talk about the fact that last night, because we got to get this in, 2 o'clock, thereabouts, here comes John Podesta out of the bullpen to tell everybody, in essence, to go home. I was disappointed. I thought, all those people came for her. Why didn't she come out? Do we know why she didn't come out? Well,
normally when that happens, and it happens a lot, they don't have a result yet. And the candidate doesn't want to concede or come out and talk after a concession until they know they've lost. At 2 o'clock, she hadn't conceded yet. I believe we think she conceded at 2:40, and then Trump came out around 3, I think. But Hillary is a sourpuss, but she did well today, I think, as her last event as a candidate ever today.
She did very well today,
well.
but she should have done it last night.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if she didn't know, I don't know. Who cares?
Today at lunch, I asked, when does the transition officially begin? And you said, today.
Oh, it's already begun. He's going there tomorrow.
What people don't realize is the transition teams have actually been meeting and doing their transition thing in the same building in Washington on different floors.
And I believe, Ellen, I might be wrong, but federal money is given to both of them this summer. Once they won their nomination,
they get transition
they've set
money.
up a transition team. Christie's the head of Trump's. Jennifer Granholm and several other people are in charge of Hillary's. And they're paid for by us, by the way, just to show you how big government is.
And to rent space.
To rent space and pay
everything.
for stuff. And they started interviewing people because to shift from one administration to another is a big logistical hiring thousands of people, all sorts of stuff.
There's a woman we work with at the White House by the name of Martha Kumar, and she's the transition expert and actually got some funding this time to run conferences. I think one happened in Florida on transitions.
Okay, when is it appropriate for the president-elect to start suggesting names of cabinet people?
They've already started.
Okay, who's out there?
Well, first of all, he could have and would have been doing it informally all summer. He's got Chris Christie running the thing. Christie would come to him and say, well, what do you think about this and that? I want to interview
But there's no place for Christie because he's radioactive.
I think Christie is in deep trouble politically in New Jersey. He might get impeached after this Bridgegate verdict. He's got his own criminal complaint against him. He has to appear in court later this month. By the way, reminds me, the president-elect has a civil trial this month on Trump University against him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, that's this month.
I could just see him showing up. Imagine that. There'll be a Saturday Night Live skit. You know, I was going to appoint my Secretary of State, but I have to come out for this trial, you know.
Yeah, what he really ought to do, what he really ought to do soon is settle that case, never have a trial, and have an announcement, I'm turning all the business over to my kids, I'm out of all of it. He cannot have this image that he's in the White House, but he's picking out the marble in some building in Italy or something. That's got to go. He's got to be the president.
The question is whether he'll do that.
Well, that's a big question, but that's what he ought to do.
All right, so let's throw some names that people obviously know from watching them on television. Newt Gingrich, is he a possible choice for Secretary of State?
That job, I don't know, but I would think he's going to have a role somewhere. More likely to me would be a White House counselor, where he's in there and he's
like a Karl Rove for him. Karl Rove
Karl Rove, yeah, maybe. But what Newt's really good at, and bad at, but he's good at it, is ideas. He comes up with some lemons of ideas. He comes up with some great ideas. He's an idea guy.
Okay.
And that's not the Secretary of State. But maybe. He's also getting on, Newt. He's in his mid-70s. And
so's Giuliani, but I was going to ask about him for Attorney General.
Or Homeland Security, I've heard.
Not CIA director?
No.
Okay.
No, he doesn't have any background in intelligence. I don't see it.
Ben Carson.
You know,
I didn't say he didn't have any intelligence.
Ben Carson.
I let that go right by.
I said he didn't have a background in intelligence.
Ben Carson.
That was not a knock on him.
Ben Carson, last night, I walk into the restaurant right before I go to sleep for a few hours, and I run into our fellow talk show host, Armstrong Williams. I said, what are you doing here?
Oh, no.
He said he was there walking and taking care of Ben Carson.
Yeah, well, they're business partners.
Yeah, but if you haven't guessed this yet, Armstrong is a little headstrong. He thinks, I mean, a lot of people think that part of the reason Ben Carson went south was because of Armstrong. What is it about that guy?
Let's not.
Shyster.
Right.
Shyster businessman.
Thank you.
But I'm talking about Armstrong Williams, not Dr. Carson. I see Dr. Carson in a couple of different roles. I can think three.
Health and Human Service?
Well, first I was going to say presiding over the transition as we get rid of Obamacare into what's coming next, because
Heck yeah.
Trump has to get rid of Obamacare. Now we have to realize, and I think we should say this up front, I think the other thing about the election yesterday that the media is not talking about, we talked about it at lunch today, is this was a huge repudiation of Obama. That the voters weren't just rejecting Hillary, they were rejecting Obamacare.
And when the premiums went up last month.
That was a killer.
Oh, my.
Obamacare specifically, the direction of the economy, it's really not recovering for most people fast enough, and the standing of America in the world. They're not happy with it, the people who voted for Trump. I think this is a rebuke. I think Obama knew it the last month, why he was out on the stump as if he was on the ballot, fighting for his legacy, because two of his signature things, Obamacare and the Iran nuke deal, are getting nuked by Trump. He's going to get rid of them, and there goes the legacy. Now, the legacy of being the first black president is a tremendous legacy, and that obviously will never change. And people feel pretty good, I think, about Barack Obama as a human being, but as a great transitional president, he transitioned into Trump getting elected.
Ohio Governor John Kasich, good friend of yours.
So goes Ohio, so goes the nation.
Does he go away?
I think you should ask the congressman a little more about that. I have a cousin by marriage who happens to be the state treasurer of Ohio and would love to see him go away. In fact, the Cleveland Plain Dealer ran a cartoon of him pushing him out of his chair, and he said, "Not so fast."
Really?
I think he's going to have trouble because he clearly did not support Trump. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I don't think he's going to have any role in the Trump administration. I think that's not happening.
Too bad. Pretty
But
smart
he's
guy,
he's a sharp guy.
budget-wise.
The other one in that boat is Ted Cruz. Now, he did endorse Trump.
Any Ted Cruz fans in the audience? You got a couple.
Yeah, but I think Ted Cruz, he did finally, about a month ago, endorse Trump. He was reluctant, but he did it. He kept his pledge, which Kasich and Jeb Bush did not keep, that they would support the nominee. And Ted Cruz has got a little trouble coming in 2018 in a primary for re-election, renomination in Texas if Congressman Mike McCall, the head of the Homeland Security Committee and the second richest member of Congress, he is talking about running in a primary against Ted Cruz. And I think Trump would help him. Trump has it in for Cruz and for Kasich.
So he could come back in Texas and drape his arm around McCall and say he's the guy.
I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, the day after the Cleveland convention, that Friday, Trump has a press conference, and he's just won the nomination. His focus should be beating Hillary. What does he do in the press conference? He says, I'm going to start a super PAC to go beat Cruz and Kasich. And this is the stuff he does that makes no sense. Yeah, I know he won, great. But to run the country, he's going to need Republicans to support him, elected Republicans. And if he always wants to alienate them, at a key point, some of them are going to say, I'm not going to support this guy. When it gets tough, and it will get tough, we'll be in a recession, something will happen, and party loyalty and supporting each other is a big thing.
It's crucial to govern because winning a race is one thing. Governing is quite a different thing, as I'm sure you know.
He has an idea that's wrong, and he's got to learn it, which is, he said repeatedly, only I can fix the taxes. Only I can change this. That's not the way our system works. It's not an I, it's a we. It's a party, it's a House, it's a Senate, and a president. And one man can lead, and he will lead, but he's got to have a lot of soldiers fighting for him.
Ellen's got some issues. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to use a
There's
quote.
a lot of issues.
I wanted to use a quote from Lyndon Johnson, who was President of the United States, and he's used the quote a few times. This is when he decided not to run for office again, and he said, I'm a free man, an American, a public servant, and a member of my party in that order, always and only.
Yeah.
Before we get to Democrats and what they do, Jeb Bush, has he been eliminated from future consideration? Is the Bush dynasty over?
Well, for the time being, I think the Bushes are on the back burner, you know. I think that was inevitable after he lost in the primaries. I mean, Jeb just didn't have it, and the people are sick of the Bushes. And Trump was very nasty towards the Bushes, and I'm sure the Bushes are sitting in Houston really fuming over this thing, but that's too bad. It's too bad.
There was a misquote. Politico, I think, had said that the Bushes voted for Hillary. It's not true. They didn't vote for anybody. But I guess George H.W. Bush voted for Hillary.
Well, he told Kathleen Kennedy Townsend in Kennebunkport about 6 weeks ago that he was going to vote for Hillary, and she tweeted that out and then got nailed for doing it. But I mean, I don't blame the old President Bush who saw his son, younger President Bush, be insulted personally in the South Carolina GOP debate by Donald Trump. Family comes before anything, you know?
Sure.
That's why I didn't think Cruz was wrong to refuse to endorse Trump. Because his original reason was, I'm not endorsing a guy who trashes my wife or my father, who says my father was in on the assassination of JFK. That's beyond the pale, you know?
Yeah. And yet, all that little stuff he did
Didn't hurt him. It hurt him, but he overcame it. Now, why did he overcome it? This is what we really need to get to, is there is a wave, has been a wave, or a wind, I'll call it wave for the analogy, a huge wave of change coming across much of the world. It was the Brexit thing. It was various elections, including Justin Trudeau in Canada, and it's here, and it is sweeping. And it's been going on for several decades. And the wave is because a big part of some of you, our fellow Americans, the working class, is suffering economically. And it has happened because of globalization, because the world is changing. The cost of labor here is high, the cost of labor overseas is low, so jobs have gone over there, wages have been depressed, and our fellow Americans are hurting, right? So they've lurched in the last 20 years. They had a good time, generally, under Bill Clinton's administration. The economy was okay. We get into the 2000s, things aren't so great. By the financial crisis of 07 and 08, the public is up in arms over it, and so the wave of change accelerates, and the people say, we need to put on the top of that wave something different. We've had the Bushes, we've had the Clintons, let's try something new. Let's try something we've never had before. African-American candidate from Chicago who's not been a part of this mess in Washington. So Obama gets up on that surfboard, rides that wave to a big victory, said, I'm going to fix Washington. And a lot of Republicans supported Obama. Colin Powell, Chris Buckley, William Safire, Julie Nixon, President Nixon's wonderful daughter, they all came out, I'm going to vote for Obama. Obama was a major disappointment. He didn't do what he said he would do. He took that financial crisis, remember Rahm Emanuel, never waste a good crisis? What did they do with it? They jammed Obamacare in. They bribed fellow Democratic senators. Thank God not one Republican voted for Obamacare, so that's good. The Democrats, it's on them. They put it in, 55% of the people never liked it. Right away in November 2010, they lose the House because of Obamacare. 2014, they lose the Senate because of Obamacare. But the Republicans in the House and Senate don't do anything about Obamacare. The grassroots is getting PO'd. The senators and congressmen say, well, we got to have the White House. We can't repeal this thing if we don't have the White House. They now have the White House and the House and the Senate, and they're going to have to take this bill out. Kill Obamacare, which sounds great, but what is going to come after it? Every one of us is going to have to get a new insurance policy. Who's going to pay? The insurance companies say we're not going to do the same thing we did before. This is going to be a dislocation like you have no
Single payer, my friend.
That's what's
Hold
coming.
on. You just heard what John said about Obamacare. Donald Trump said, Obamacare is a disaster. We have to get rid of it. But he didn't say how.
The hand
he didn't
signals
say
are
how.
very good. Yeah, very good.
He didn't say how. Now,
I've been watching SNL tape. That's all I gotta do.
he being the Republican thinks it's going to go single payer and this is evil and horrible. I want to tell you, since I was last here, I turned 65. I'm an old bat. And I went to Disneyland for my 65th birthday.
How
and I
appropriate.
have the mouse ears. And I have a picture in front in Disneyland with my mouse ears and my Medicare card. And I have to tell you, Medicare is wonderful. And there's no reason on earth why we can't just allow people to buy into a single payer system. It would work just fine.
Well, here's what I worry about. See, I know that sounds great. And if it would work, okay, great, because Medicare is pretty good. But even in Medicare lately,
He's saying that.
because of money problems, they've been cutting back on the reimbursement to doctors. The quality of the care, therefore, is less. Many more doctors are opting out of taking Medicare patients. If we now make everybody into a single payer or Medicare plan, it'll be the same as in other countries. They will dumb down the quality of the care. They'll ration care. They'll treat old people badly because, let's face it, the highest cost in health care is spent in the last year or two of a dying person. And the government will say, well, we can't afford that, so we're just, mom ain't getting this treatment. And how many of us want that?
But old people are already discounted, particularly women. And any one of you who's my
old
age,
bats?
older, old bats,
Yeah.
will tell you that doctors don't listen to people, women
Yeah.
particularly our
Well,
age.
that's not good. I don't want the government, I just, as a Republican, if I could help it, I don't want the government running health care, but I don't like insurance bureaucrats running it either.
Well, they're making a fortune off of it.
Yeah.
There's a statement that just came in from Bernie Sanders. It just came in. I'm going to read it. It's not very long, and then get reaction from both of you, beginning with Ellen. Donald Trump tapped into the anger of a declining middle class that is sick and tired of establishment economics, establishment politics, and the establishment media. People are tired of working longer hours for lower wages, of seeing decent paying jobs go to China and other low-wage countries, of billionaires not paying any federal income taxes, and of
Like
not
Trump.
being able to afford a college education for their kids, all while the very rich become much richer. To the degree that Mr. Trump is serious about pursuing policies that improve the lives of working families in this country, I and other progressives are prepared to work with him. To the degree he pursues racist, sexist, xenophobic, anti-environmental policies, we will vigorously oppose him.
Okay,
Good.
so, by
Good
the
for
way,
him. Ooh.
okay, by the way,
Hold on, Ellen first. Go ahead. Ellen first. Go ahead. I'm just the referee here, folks. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, you know, Bernie, he was my man. But secondly, I think that he's absolutely right. And where us as press really fell down on the job was that we did not go into middle America, we did not interview people, we did not find out what their concerns were, and that is where we really fell down, and that is what both Trump and Bernie are really reaching into. I want to just say one other thing, though, that in terms of people being angry and why Hillary Clinton lost this election, even though it was not by a lot, if you look at a Trump state, Arkansas, home of the Clintons, 60% went to Trump.
yeah, but it's been a Republican state in presidential races for the last 20 years.
I
That
understand,
reminds me,
but
Mike Huckabee. Is there a place for him?
Yeah,
He
Trump likes him.
His daughter.
Trump likes him, and the daughter was in the campaign.
Right.
But I want to finish one thing
All
on
right,
this
go for
wave
it.
thing. So you had Obama, rode the wave, he won, he didn't produce. And so the wave continued this year, and Trump was the smartest guy, got up on that wave. This is where I was frustrated with Trump. If he had just stayed on his surfboard, kept the mouth zipped, and ridden the thing, he'd have won big over Hillary. But he couldn't do it. He had to keep making these statements and things going after Mrs. Khan and the Mexican judge, and then we had the Access Hollywood thing. I mean, really a lot of stuff that's really derailed his campaign. And he did win, so great. He won despite this stuff. Didn't have to happen. You know, he could have won bigger, but he was smart enough to sense that this thing was going on, as did Bernie. Bernie rode that wave too. And I will tell you all this, Trump's got a term. If in 4 years things are still rotten for those voters that voted, that wave will be up and running and someone else will get up on that wave. We're going to keep doing it till things get better for these people.
Kelly Ayotte
Lost. She
lost.
just conceded.
She conceded her U.S. Senate seat in New Hampshire to Democrat Maggie Hassan. The campaign says it gives the Democrats their second pickup in the chamber this election cycle. Hassan's victory makes the count for senators who caucus with Democrats 48 seats, short of the majority that they were aiming for Election Day. Tammy Duckworth of Illinois was the only other Democrat to pick up a seat. So it's a slim margin, but it's still a majority.
And we practiced this before we came on. We learned that there is another seat still waiting in December, Louisiana. So the Republicans could be up to 52.
Correct.
Yeah.
So how do the Democrats rebuild after this?
This is going to be an interesting fight in and with the Democrats.
Because everybody said the Republican Party was going to blow up today, no matter what happened. I don't hear that now.
Well, I think you have the sort of, the middle Democrats, such as the Hillary Clinton types, and then you have the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. And I think there is going to be huge, to use a Trump word, huge discussions in there about the direction of the Democratic Party. And I think they are going to have a winter meeting, and that's where it's going to come up.
So there'll be a new head of the party, probably, or a new
Usually there's an
wing?
elected person, yes, at that point.
John, what do you think?
By the way, I'm going to give you another instance where the same party had all three. As you were saying, it was Republican. Let's go back to Bill Clinton in '92, had the House and the Senate. And, Democrats are riding high, Republicans are low. 2 years later, Republicans win the House and Senate. Obama had the House and Senate in the White House. 2 years later, he loses the House. 4 years later, the other one. What looks one way one day can do a complete 180. So the Democrats right now are totally in the wilderness. They've lost everything. The House, the Senate, the White House, and an awful lot of governorships and state houses. You're at rock bottom. And you know what? That's not always a bad place to be, because the party needs to re-examine what the hell they believe in. And had they had that discussion and not gotten into this idea that we owe it to Hillary, because she came in second 8 years ago, they really screwed themselves.
But
They screwed it.
Weren't we saying this about Republicans a year ago? What do they stand for?
Well, but
Yeah,
there's another
yeah.
issue, which is that the Democratic Party was always the party of the working person. And Trump and others have made the Republican Party more that way.
Yep.
And me as a Democrat, I have a problem with that.
Did minorities in this country suddenly wake up and say, you know what, they're not doing anything for us? So instead of traditionally voting for Democrats, they decided to go to Republicans?
They didn't go to Republicans.
Well, Trump got 7 to 8% of the African-American vote.
Well, that's not
mean,
why he
that's
won,
still-
though. I think why he won
No,
is
it's not why he won.
He jacked up the rural white vote, came out for him.
No, that is not why he won, but it's still, why would an African-American vote for Trump, given where he's at? And it's because he spoke to people who he felt were the working people
Yeah.
in
Well,
the
I mean,
United States.
Normally, a
And-
Republican gets 5%.
And I want to say something else. He's talked a lot about trade and that kind of thing, but there's another problem. There's a factory they closed in Mexico, and it went to somewhere in Pennsylvania. But it didn't give workers jobs. It gave robots jobs. And
that's
that's a
coming.
big problem.
Well, someone's got to build the robots, so hopefully we're going to build them here.
In a short time. That's a short-term
Listen,
fix.
seriously, I ran into a guy who's involved with a foreign investment fund, and I was waiting to get a sandwich in line, and he said to me, we're doing all this investment in this robot thing, and he said, soon there will be robots that you will have that will paint your house, mow your lawn, do all this stuff. I said, wow, that's amazing. He said, no, it's not. Because what it's going to do to society is all the people today who paint the house, mow the lawn, out of work. What are we going to do with these people? What's going to be of them? It's a big problem for long-term society,
Headline from Drudge, globalist despair. The French last night, they weren't happy. Like 12:30 at night, they were already making statements saying, we're not crazy about this. Then the English make their statement this morning. Do we really care? Trump talks about more of isolationism a la Pat Buchanan.
Well, I think we do care, but I have to tell you, I probably got 10 emails from South Sudan today, happy as a clam that was Trump.
But these are people trying to sell you real estate.
No.
Everybody know this? He's going to live in South Sudan in about 2.5 years.
Why are they happy about Trump?
Well, when I was last in South Sudan, they started talking Trump. So, I'm a little Democrat. What do I know? So I said to them, why do you like Trump so much? Well, they couldn't really put it. First of all, I think they feel that the Clinton Foundation didn't do much in Africa, which
You
they
think?
haven't. Yeah, okay. I know that. But secondly, they don't really have freedom of speech there. And I think they like that Trump talks anything he wants to say. And I think they identify with him.
The headlines of the magazines are extraordinary. I'm sorry we can't share them with all of you. New York Post, President Trump. The London Times, Trump surge. Metro Magazine, it's Trump. Then New Statesman, whatever that is, the Trump apocalypse, and it's an atomic bomb. These people watch too much television. Our foreign, and why did Putin contact Trump today? What was that? Was that
This to me is one of the more worrisome things in this campaign. I never thought I'd see the day when the Republican nominee would be in any way warm towards a Soviet, now Russian, dictator who was a KGB agent. This guy is a very difficult human being. If Trump thinks he can like schmooze with this guy and happily do business with him, he's fooling himself. This is a very dangerous and clever and evil person.
And we will agree on that.
Yeah, and I don't think America should be in any way reaching out in a happy way towards Vladimir Putin. I just think Trump is way off on that one. It wasn't an issue in the campaign. The voters don't care. But we should care as Americans that this guy is against our interests. And our president's got to be aware of that. And our president-elect is easy to be flattered and falls for that. And if the world sees that, that's the way to get to him. Just praise him and then rip him off.
Okay, let's talk about Pence for a moment. How many Pence fans in the audience? Applause? About half, okay. I thought he did a great job in running. You don't like him?
No.
All right, talk about it.
Well, I like the fact that he was a talk show host, so we have that in common.
Yeah.
But I think he's socially out of the picture.
Really?
He's very anti-gay. That ship has sailed.
That's the hallmark for a good. Well, he's anti-gay. I guess.
No, that's a huge issue.
Really?
Yes.
That's a huge issue.
Yeah.
But the president-elect is not anti-gay.
He is not.
No, he's not.
And I think the vice president, when he's vice president, is going to be the day-to-day guy carrying out the policies of the president up on Capitol Hill, where he comes from. I think Pence will be a very active
the
vice
abortion
president.
issue, I mean, all those issues. He's just
Yeah,
horrible.
but that's the Republican position. They're all of that. Everyone, including Trump, who said women should be punished for having an abortion. That's their position. They say it. When they get in office, they do nothing about it.
The reason I brought up Pence was I had this weird message on radio today from somebody who said that Pence was so good, and he was so good in the debate, that he thinks that if Trump screws up, 4 years from now, he would challenge him in a primary. And I'm saying, are you kidding me? To take a line from West Wing, he would be the wackiest vice president since Aaron Burr, and Burr shot a guy. You know?
I think we shouldn't be worried about 2020. Can we worry about the first year of
the reason I say this is Rubio has to take a back seat, just got reelected to the Senate, and told Floridians he will serve his full 6 years. That takes him out of 2020. God willing. And then Cruz, as you said, could get a challenge. I don't think it's a cakewalk for that guy either.
No. Listen, all of these guys and gals, because of Fiorina, who all ran against Trump, every one of them rooted for Hillary yesterday to win this race.
Whoa.
No doubt about it.
Wow, does everybody think that?
Of course,
Yeah.
they all want it. They want to run again, and they don't want Trump. Now they're stuck. Trump is going to be renominated, most likely in 4 years, which means at least 8 years before they can run. And they don't like Trump anyway, because he treated them badly in the primaries and was not personally good to them. And each one of them, when he beat them, he wasn't gracious to them.
He kind of ground his heels
Very
into
poor
it.
form. When you win, you should be magnanimous in victory. He was bitter in victory and treated them badly and kept trashing them even after they dropped out of the race.
Well, you say they're going to be nominated. He's going to be nominated again in 4 years. But, let's face it, nobody's really dealt with the fact that both Trump and Hillary were no spring chickens.
70.
She's 69 and he's 70.
Correct.
And in 4 years, he's going to be 74 years old.
But Reagan was 74.
Well, yeah, he was 69 when he got elected. So,
okay.
yeah. But, I mean, I'm just saying, from these candidates, knowing them as human beings, none of them wanted, do you think Jeb Bush voted for Donald Trump yesterday? No way. None of them want Trump to do well. They hate Trump.
One word, Illuminati.
Oh, okay. Where's Tom Hanks when we need him?
Yeah, okay. We're going to take questions from the audience. We're going to ask you to come down and put your question. We have two of our students from Embry-Riddle here that will bring microphones to the end. If you would come down. We ask that the question be brief, to the point, and that the answer be brief so that we can get as many voices in as possible for this presentation. Good evening. You're first tonight at the Embry-Riddle Speaker Series.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mark. John, this is, well, it's actually for both of you. You mentioned that this election was an indictment of Obama. I saw it also as an indictment of the mainstream media. And the mainstream media that actually covered for, promoted, colluded with the Democrat Party, colluded with the DNC. And my question to you as two journalists is, when is the mainstream media going to do their job and tell the truth to the American public about what's going on?
Never.
We consistently have had a cover-up by the mainstream media. I mean, Fox accepted, and some of the conservative talk radio accepted, that did not cover what was going on with the Clinton administration, what's going on with the Clinton Foundation, the criminal activity.
There's a lot there.
So
Right.
I'm just saying, mainstream media, do your job.
Okay, John, and then Ellen.
It's a great question, but don't hold your breath that there'll be any change, because they're not mainstream. The media has changed in our recent lifetime. As a Republican, I can tell you, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post. That's basically the, quote, mainstream media. They're all in the tank for any Democrat. But for Republicans, we now have our side of things. We have talk radio. We have Fox. We have the internet. We have a way to get our message out. And if you look at the ratings, how are the ratings for Fox compared to MSNBC and CNN? Fox is going up, they're going down. How about the New York Times? How's the ratings or the readership?
Readership is down.
All of it's down. How about the evening news, CBS, NBC? Down, down, down. It's down for technical reasons. People don't watch TV as much. And it's down for philosophical reasons. People say, I don't get what like this gentleman says. So it's not going to change. But it's not the end of the world. We Republicans win elections despite it.
So additional viewpoint.
Well, I want to say that I actually think it has changed. And it's not the mainstream media, because readership is down with the New York Times or CBS or whatever. For instance, yesterday on Twitter, by 6 p.m., there were 25 million election-related posts. And since the first debate, it's 6 weeks in a day, there were more than 1 billion election-related posts, and people were using Twitter to check in on what was going on. Of course, Donald Trump Twitters as well, but the fact is that there are now other options that people are using, except not mainstream media.
Yeah.
And now we'll continue. Over here, your question. Good evening. Right into the microphone, please.
When it comes to naming names, like General Flynn, who was a huge Trump supporter, and other names like that, what do you recommend you think will go towards Secretary of Defense? Do you think General Allen will claim Secretary of Defense or Director of National Intelligence? What about Allen West?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Allen West. His image just came up. He's been absent. Is he not a factor?
He moved to Texas, I think, didn't he?
Moved from Florida to Texas?
I think he moved to Texas, right?
I didn't know that.
Well, first of all, General Flynn, who was at Trump's elbow through most of the campaign, I would think he's on the short list for National Security Advisor or head of Homeland Security, Director of National Intelligence, probably. I think you'll hear him for that. I think there are going to be a lot of people we don't know of whose names are going to come out over the next few weeks.
Any names pop into your mind, Ellen?
I mean, just the names that he mentioned, a lot of the people that we've seen on the campaign trail with him. I'm curious, of course, who's going to be the press secretary.
Yeah, the one name that I see that makes total sense to me is the Secretary of the Treasury. It would be Steve Mnuchin from Goldman Sachs, who is Trump's finance chairman for the campaign and a Democrat who gave money to Hillary Clinton 8 years ago.
How many of the audience missed Dr. Condoleezza Rice?
Well, she won't be in.
She won't
She will
be.
not have anything to do with Donald Trump.
They still use her for the
She's
Conservative
not-
Action Fund.
Yeah, but she's not getting anywhere near Trump.
Okay. Your question. Good evening.
Now, now that Trump is elected, there is a Supreme Court seat up for in the next 4 years, at least one, maybe more, with the age of some of the justices getting up in the 80s with some of them. How do you think that whole process is going to go down, because they don't have a supermajority, and there is the possibility of a filibuster, and they have a majority, but there's definitely going to have to be some bipartisan cooperation. And how do you think that it's going to go, and who do you think are the potential nominees that Donald Trump will put up for the Supreme Court?
Any names for the Supreme Court to sit
Trump
out there?
has released, I believe, 21 names throughout the campaign. He compiled 2 lists that he said most likely he would pick someone from that list. So let's just say he picked, none of us know these people. He picked some qualified and conservative judge. Now, the Republicans do control the Senate. They therefore control the Senate Judiciary Committee, but they only have probably 53 seats when it's all
And
said
they
and
need
done.
60.
Let's go over this filibuster thing, all right? The tradition in the U.S. Senate is nothing can pass unless you have 60 votes. Yeah, we believe in majority rules, which is the way the House of Representatives works. But in the Senate, the tradition is a filibuster. Everybody know what a filibuster is? Right? So Trump proposes Mark Bernier to be on the Supreme Court. And one Democratic senator says, I don't want him, I'm going to filibuster it. Unless you can get 60 votes to break the filibuster, Mark is never getting on that court. Harry Reid already used the nuclear option, not on Supreme Court justices, but on appeals court judges, and talked about doing it. The nuclear option is to blow up the filibuster rule and say 51 votes and you win.
Wow.
Now, I think what will happen is, this is a very, very well put question. Trump will propose someone, Mitch McConnell and the Judiciary Committee, which is Grassley, they will try to work with the Democrats and see if they can't get them to agree to the choice. But if somebody is going to filibuster it, I think they'll say, screw it, we'll do the nuclear option.
Wow.
I think they'll do it because they want to win these things now.
Ellen, additional viewpoint?
I would agree with him. I don't know, though. I mean, what happens, there's been a lot of talk about this 60-person rule necessary, and the question is whether that stays or not, and that has certainly been a discussed
Right, well, it would only
issue.
be used in they wouldn't get rid of the filibuster for everything. It would be for Supreme Court nominees.
Right, but
Yeah.
the question is whether it would filter to some other issues as well.
It's up to the Republicans. They run the Senate. They're the risk, though. See, when you do something like this, you're all happy when you do it until the Democrats run the Senate,
Yeah.
and then they do it.
Yeah.
And the history of America is we like this filibuster. I hope everyone realizes the founding fathers and the creators of these things were really sharp about something. And it was about not allowing change to be easy in America. To change something through the system, you have to really push it. And it has to be able to get through the House and the Senate and the White House and through elections and all of it. If we had things that make it easier to change things, yeah, in the short run we go, oh, great. But suddenly, what you like that got changed gets changed again quickly and you don't like it. I like the system and the history of it. I think over time we'll get what we want. We've won this election. We've got the power now. Trump can get Supreme Court justices through, but he's got to work a little bit with some Democrats to get them to go along with it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Unlike the state of Florida, where you have things like pig amendments. Over here, here's Arthur Burns.
Hi. There's a lot of echo chambers on the internet, and one of them seems to be the Libertarian group. I had really predicted that nobody was going to hit the magic number because the Libertarians were all going to vote for other folks like they said, and all those people that said they couldn't vote for Trump or couldn't vote for Hillary were going to help the third parties. Do you see any future for the third parties in our system the way it is now?
Well, I don't even know what Gary Johnson and Jill Stein got. Trump and Hillary each got 48 and change, so that's 97. So they got 3%. Yeah, so I have always thought, and I still believe it, right, that we're going to see the day in our lifetime when an independent, which you can call third party, but an independent candidate will win the presidency by running against the two parties and saying they're both rotten. Trump almost did that.
Really a Republican in the beginning, so wouldn't he be that?
Who was?
Trump wasn't
Yeah.
really a Republican.
I actually always thought Trump shouldn't run as a Republican.
Yeah.
That in order to run as a Republican, he changed himself and became pro-life on abortion, where he was
You
pro-choice.
thought he should have been a Republican or Democrat?
No, he should have been an independent.
An independent?
Yes, why not? Then he wouldn't have gone through these primaries, gotten through all this dirt around, and just sit there and say, they're both bad. I will change the system. They're both corrupt.
Like Ross
parties."
Perot, kind of, sort
Well,
of?
look how well Ross Perot did.
19% of the vote.
Yeah.
He got 19% after dropping out and being a little out there. He was the father of Donald Trump. The same rallies, the same issues. We're spending ourselves to death. People
Wow.
forget Perot was Trump 20 years ago.
Before we come over here, listen to this. This just in. They've now done an analysis that said that if Trump had faced Bill Clinton, and in the math, if he had fought Obama in 2012, Trump would have beaten Obama. He got more votes. He would have actually, I guess, the Electoral College. It says right here in the National Review, the math shows that Trump, 2016, would have beaten Obama in 2012. What do you make of that? Over here.
Different race.
Yeah.
In New England, Democrats lost, I think, 1 or 2 governor's races. Do you think in New England it's changing the tide between the Democrats and the Republicans, and Governor Malloy of Connecticut is under really tough scrutiny? Do you think that Republicans will be taking back more territory from the Democrats in other regions besides the middle of America?
Can I take that coming from New England? I hope so.
Well, but what governorships did the Republicans
What did they
win?
lose? Did they lose Rhode
lost.
Island?
They lost Vermont, and they lost, Republicans gained Vermont and New Hampshire.
Wow.
I don't think so. I think Sununu was way behind.
Sununu was behind. It was
Did he
Sununu's-
win? Did the Democrats
Sununu
win?
won.
Yeah, he won.
But no, he said New England.
He said New England, we lost too. I didn't know that.
Sununu won.
He did win.
I think so.
And
Wow.
and
Look that up.
somewhat in
Wasn't he way behind?
Scott and Vermont.
And in Vermont,
Yeah.
John Sununu, the former governor of New Hampshire,
Is
had
his son.
his son wins. So yeah, picked him up. I think New England is changing. I mean, I have family in Massachusetts, and there are a lot more Republicans coming out and winning in
Well, you
Massachusetts.
have the governor of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker,
Yeah.
was about the first Republican governor to say, I'm not voting for Trump.
Wow.
Yeah?
Nobody over here? Yes, your question. If you can get closer to the microphone, we can get some help, Deepak. Bring the microphone to the lady like
There we
Tony
go.
Bennett.
That's better. Okay.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes. Do you feel that Trump will appoint a prosecutor, as he has said, for Hillary Clinton?
I don't either. I think
Nope.
that
That was talk.
that went away last night.
With the love that was expressed, the
Because,
respect that he said he had for her.
no, I think that he would say, hey, I did that. Trump, the one thing you have to say about Trump is that, and I think that's one of the reasons Americans like him, is because they feel like he's very similar to them. And he will say, hey, that was when I was running for election, and I'm not interested in it anymore. I'm president of the United States, and she's a very valuable piece of what she can bring along, and that's what I think he'll do. What do you think? Do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, Sununu won by 2 points.
Yeah.
I think that he will not pursue prosecuting Hillary, because if he does, it will be such a big news story that it takes away from what Trump wants the country to focus on. It's why Ford pardoned Nixon, as it would have consumed the country and would have consumed his presidency. It's why George W. Bush, when he took over, and they asked him, are you going to go after the Clintons for all the stuff they did, stealing stuff out of the White House? They said, forget it. I'm not doing that. So Hillary is going to go away. And we're not going to have much more of the Clintons. I think it's done. I think I think that Hillary, first of all, we ought to talk about the foundation.
Yeah, we'll hold
Okay.
that thought. Do you think the Clintons go away?
Well, I definitely, listen, I think Bill Clinton is not well. He doesn't look well. And I think that they have a lot of money and, you know, she'll write a book or something and that's how they'll go away.
No one will read that book.
Well, she'll get an advance for it.
Won't get as much. I don't think she gets the big advantage.
I'm telling you, I have friends that would, if Hillary wrote an X on a sheet of paper, they'd buy the book.
You need to get some new friends.
Jim Purdy is a former Republican Party chairman. He's the public defender for the 7th Circuit, and he's a member of the Radio Evolutionaries on WNDB. Welcome, James.
Thank you all for coming. I do have one question, and going back to the filibuster. How do you repeal Obamacare with a 60-person necessary to defeat a filibuster in the Senate?
Yeah, well, good question. They're going to have, what do we think they're going to have? 47 Democrats, Ellen?
Yeah, that's what
Will
we
there
figured.
be?
47 or 48, yeah.
Okay, so they're going to be 50, they're going to be 50, what do we think? 52 Republicans, right? So let's say President Trump says, here's my plan to repeal Obamacare. The House will pass it, no problem. Goes over to the Senate. Every Republican will go along with that, so that's 52, we think, or maybe, yeah. You need 8 Democrats to break a filibuster. There will be 8 Democrats in there who are scared to death of 2018 and 2020. This thing's a loser of a bill. It's hurting people. The premiums are going up, and it's a job killer. How many people have been moved from a 40-hour work week, full-time job with health care to under 30 hours, so it's part-time, so you're not given health care? This Obamacare is dead. The election said it's dead. So I think they can bust the filibuster.
But at least even Trump is talking about a universal health care package.
Well, that's the thing. I've seen this coming. And if you go back and look at Trump, before he was a candidate, he was always in favor of single payer, and he used to tout the Scottish healthcare system,
Yes,
which is England. I mean, it's not us. It might be you, but it ain't us.
Dr. Bill Grams has served as the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences here at Embry-Riddle, and he joins us tonight. Dean Grams.
Yes, thank you for being here, John and Ellen. And my question is a follow-up to something you said earlier. Things can change so quickly. Party can be down and out, seemingly, and then come back because of events. I have a feeling that since Trump reiterated his support for reinvigorating the cities and helping African Americans in particular, if he does this, I've heard talk that he could turn it around and he could have a majority of the black vote in the future. If he created an enterprise zone in Detroit, for example, and put some effective businessman there to really do some building and regenerating the city as a test case, can he turn around this so that he has nearly a majority of the black vote?
Well, I think it's a great goal. I do. I think that I've never understood why we Republicans write off everybody and just say we can't get them, we can't get them. So yes, we should try not just to win elections, but to help these people. And so we'll see if they really try it, you know. Right, listen, for the first year or so, he can do anything he wants. The House and Senate are going to give him anything he wants. Now the question is, what does he want?
Jim Oddie was a former candidate for state committeeman, and he joins us with his question tonight.
Good evening. Ellen, you were talking before, Joe Biden might have had a chance, but do you honestly think, as blatantly to the left as Bernie Sanders was, that he could have won against Trump? And John, do you think that without the media telling us the bad things Donald Trump said, people wanted to hear what Donald Trump said, and without the media telling us what he really meant and how bad it was, do you think people would have wanted to hear more of what he said and he still could have won?
All right, Jim, hold on, because those are two big questions. First, the Bernie Sanders question for Ellen. Then we'll come back for the second
I
part.
actually do think that Bernie Sanders could have won because the reason I think Hillary Clinton did not win, it didn't have anything to do with her message. It had to do with her baggage. And that Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders has known at this point not a whole lot of known baggage. And I think that it would have made a more level playing field in that kind of way. Now, I predicted that Donald Trump was going to win way back 6 months ago, so I just want to say, or 5 months ago, that I think that the baggage issue in coming with, all the emails and scandals and all that stuff really hurt her quite a bit.
The second part of your question, Jim?
Wait, Congressman, do you want to respond?
No, that's good.
Okay.
The mic's gone. Okay. What I'm saying is that people seem to really like what Donald Trump was saying, but they didn't like the media's take on what Donald Trump was saying. If Donald Trump didn't get filtered through the media, do you think he still could have got elected saying the things he was saying?
Well, let's go back to a year ago. November, December, January, February, March, all this period of a year ago through the primaries, Donald Trump was on every TV show every morning. He'd call into the Today Show from probably in his bathrobe.
First candidate running for president ever got to phone it in.
Phone it in and get unlimited time whenever he wanted it. And I don't want to hear any complaints about the media. The media made this guy.
Yeah.
He got free media. If anybody ought to complain, it should be the other Republicans running against him in the primaries.
Who had to come in studio every time.
They couldn't even do that. They didn't want them. They wanted Trump because Trump got ratings.
Yeah.
And he still got ratings right up to the end. So I tell you, I know I hate these media people. They're the worst, awful, awful. But don't get hung up on it because it doesn't have that much of an effect. And they did report the emails. Wikipedia. They went after Hillary.
WikiLeaks.
WikiLeaks. Yeah, excuse me.
By the way, just FYI,
I got to take a WikiLeak.
I spent 3 hours with Julian Assange on Saturday at the Ecuadorian Embassy in London.
Listen to this. Go ahead.
Well, I did.
Yeah.
But one of the things he did say is that the leaks were not from, the Russians. They were an internal source from the Hillary campaign or from somebody that knew Hillary, an enemy. He does not think they're from Russians. And he said Russia got credit for something WikiLeaks should have gotten credit for.
Well, how many people think that there was part of the party, the Democratic Party, that was trying to put the poison in? Because I always wondered if there were people who just secretly wanted to ruin it for her within their own party. Do you think that?
Well, as he said, she's been around a long time. She has a lot of enemies, and the enemies that he had or has are mainly in the real estate business, but not, he hasn't been in public life, so he doesn't have that sort of enemies that all of us would get if we were in public life.
John, did you think that there were people within her own party that were trying to put the poison in or not?
I don't really think so. I think that Democrats today have become the Republicans of 30 years ago. 30 years ago when Reagan was around, the Republicans were united. There was no dissonance. They were really together. And the Democrats were the fractious party fighting each other. That's reversed now. It used to be Republicans always nominated the next guy in line and all that stuff. That's what the Democrats have become. How much dissent have we heard against Obama from Democrats in these 8 years? Zero, right?
I think we have, but that's just...
Not as much, but I mean some. But Hillary was next in line, so they gave this thing to her, and they rigged it for her. That in Iowa, we were here sitting in these seats with some of you on February 1st, waiting for the Iowa caucus results. We went and had dinner that night and got the results at dinner. And nice Ellen paid for dinner, by the way. And what do you have to say that for? Seriously. So what we now know about Iowa was they never released the final numbers from Iowa. The Iowa caucuses are run by the Democratic Party, not by the Board of Elections.
So the fix was in.
The fix was in. Bernie won Iowa. And they never released it. And if he had won that, the whole thing, the next week was New Hampshire, he was going to win that big. If he won the first two events, Hillary's done. That thing was rigged, and they paid for it yesterday. They paid for it.
Why is it, I want to get to your question, sir, why is it that Bernie never jumped up and down and said, hey, this is, because everybody else felt what you felt, that the fix was in for her. I mean, didn't they
You look
actually...
like sour grapes.
Yeah, but they drew straws, and he lost 6 out of 6. That's impossible.
Yeah, I don't know. He should have. But, you know, he made some mistakes early on, Bernie. Remember the first debate in October 2015 when he says, oh, we're all sick and tired of your damned emails. Oh, really? If he'd pushed this email thing, that might have been the difference for him winning the
Would have knocked her off her
nomination.
pins.
Could have done it, and I think the reason he didn't do it, Ellen, you're a Democrat, you tell me, is that he didn't want to anger her supporters because he wanted them, if she collapsed on her own, he would want them
Well,
to
that
come
may
to
have
her.
been a tactic that he took, for sure. On the other hand, I think that he was trying to take the high road.
Yeah.
Wow.
Against someone who lives on the low road, by the way.
Your question, good evening, sir.
We've, Connie Shad here. We've just had, 3.5 years of politicking. Now we're going to go through 3 or 4 months of inauguration. When will the politicking start again? I am so sick of the telephone calls and the trashing. And is it going to be another 3 years of politicking?
Probably January 22nd, sir.
Right.
That's the day after the inauguration.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what we know, that there won't be any Republican presidential politicking for a couple years minimum. And that it will only be, if Trump does well, and he wants to run again, he will not be challenged. It'll be, so the politicking that you're sick of will be by the Democrats big time for 2020. And I can't even tell you a name. The Democrats have no bench at all. If you look around, I mean, what do they have that's presidential timber in 2020? They don't have a lot. They had 2 guys yesterday who were presidential timber, and they both lost.
Evan Bayh.
Evan Bayh, and this kid who's very good, Jason Kander, who lost to Roy Blunt in Missouri, a very attractive combat veteran candidate.
They have potential.
But he lost. Doesn't mean he can't come back, and he will. How many people know that 8 years before becoming president, Barack Obama lost a race, a Democratic primary for the House of Representatives in Chicago? Do you know that? He ran against Bobby Rush.
I remember Bobby Rush.
Bobby Rush was an anti, Black Panther kind of guy years ago, became a congressman. He's still a congressman. And Barack Obama ran against him in a Democratic primary in 2000 and lost and almost caused Michelle to leave him because she didn't want any part of that race. 4 years later, he's a U.S. Senator. 4 years later, he's President of the United States. So losing a race, it's not the end of the world.
Well, Lincoln lost
Lincoln lost a
a lot of races.
A lot. 2 Senate races.
Since you opened the door, Michelle, how many people think that Michelle Obama is going to run for the Senate one day herself? Look at this.
No, I don't
No?
believe it.
No.
She has said, and he said, she doesn't want to do it. She's a dynamite candidate. Dynamite. Dynamite. She ran in Illinois, she could win.
Yeah.
But I don't think she wants it.
Where we disagree is I think the Democrats have a lot of people that they are going to put up and could put up and might win.
Can you tell us a few?
Well, I mean, if she wasn't so old, I would say Elizabeth Warren, and I think she would do very well. She's 67. But you have to be careful what you wish for, because remember, your friends, the Republicans, turned her down to head up that Consumer Commission, and she just said, and ran and won for Senate.
I think she hurt herself a lot this year.
Pocahontas.
Well, not that, but I think she hurt herself by getting in too tight with Hillary.
Yeah, that surprised
I think
me.
she should have kept her independence. 2 years ago, they did focus groups around the country, and Elizabeth Warren was the most popular politician in this country. She was considered above the political people, no longer. But she's not to be dismissed. But there really aren't a lot of people.
Yeah.
You've got Andrew Cuomo.
You just have Tammy Duckworth that just won.
She's dynamite. No, she's good.
Come on.
She's good.
She's won.
Yeah.
And you watch, a couple years from now, she'll be like moving up
I'll
there.
tell you who I like. I think she's dynamite. Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, yeah.
Congresswoman from Hawaii, a Buddhist, by the way, a Iraq War veteran, was a member of the Democratic National Committee and got into it with, what's the congresswoman from Palm Beach? What's her name? The one that was,
Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you, Duke. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz threw her off the committee, which will help Tulsi Gabbard. She, watch for her. She's a comer.
Couple of names. Anybody going to miss Corinne Brown? Bye-bye. How many John Micah fans in the audience? Yeah.
I know you were upset about John Micah.
One of the best congressmen I ever saw. I didn't always agree with him, and I think two things hurt him. He didn't take the campaign seriously until 7 weeks ago. Nancy Pelosi put over $6 million into the Stephanie Murphy campaign, and he got trained. He was insisting on this rail issue, and Volusia County still hasn't figured a way to pay for it, and I think that hurts. I got a phone call today from a listener who actually said to him, you realize that this train issue that you're working on is going to be your Waterloo. And there are people who said that that's the reason they didn't vote for him. Now, decidedly, he ran in a district that was redrawn, largely Democrat, but Stephanie Murphy, nobody knows her here. I mean, our congressman is Ron DeSantis. And he, with the redrawing, all of Volusia is in his district, but we don't see him as much. We saw Micah all the time, didn't we? So that's a disappointment. That's probably the biggest story. That made national news last night on Fox, that Micah lost.
No.
Were there any other congressional names that either of you know, that the general public would know, that have either disappeared or they're going away? This, to me, was the big story.
Well, not so much with Congress, although I supported two people running against members who did not win.
And what happened? El Paso beat Zephyr Teachout, right?
I was like heartbroken.
New York
I
race.
voted for Zephyr Teachout.
Yeah. Oh.
And then a friend of mine ran against, in the New York district, ran against, John Plum ran against Mr. Reed, who actually, even though he's a total right-wing, I mean, he makes, whatever, he gives new words to the right wing. He's a very nice guy, okay. Tom Reed, and he won. But
by the way, can I finish an earlier thought that just came back in my mind as Ellen's thinking about?
Absolutely.
Which is, someone asked it too. If Trump had lost yesterday and we hadn't kept the Senate, we might be sitting here tonight talking about the end of the Republican Party, right? They can't win the presidency anymore. They lost the Senate. All they have is the House, and what's going to happen? Instead, Trump, narrowly, but he does win. We keep the Senate. Republicans are riding high, and we're talking about the Democrats being down and out. And I was trying inarticulately an hour ago to say that when you're down and out is often the best time, because you get your act back in gear, you wait for the other party to screw up, which they usually do, and you come back better and stronger, rid of the baggage of Hillary, finding a couple of new attractive candidates, which the Democrats will. Maybe Tulsi Gabbard is one of them, I don't know. And the tendency for parties like the Republicans, when they have the House, Senate, and White House, they usually screw it up. They overreach, there's nothing stopping them. They do too much too quickly, and they start losing. And that probably is what we're looking at.
Finally, you brought up the Clinton Foundation. I wanted to give you, is that going to go away? What happens? Because you gave an interesting scenario at lunch today about why it was working.
I think 90% of the donations to the Clinton Foundation were advanced bribes. They were people gave money so that when Hillary is in the White House, they have an in with her. And now that there will be no Hillary in the White House, thank God, I don't think they're going to give to the Clinton Foundation anymore. I agree with Ellen. Bill doesn't look well. Bill's entire life the last few years has been winning this campaign to vindicate himself for the impeachment back in '99. That if he could get back to if he could get back to the White House, it's sticking it to the Republicans who impeached him, and it didn't happen. And so his raison d'etre is gone. Hillary is going to flounder around, and that foundation and Teneo and these companies, I think they're all going down. And Hillary's going to end up I could see her as the president of a college, something like that, you know.
My problem with the Clinton Foundation is not that they, took money from Saudis. Hey, listen, I run a foundation in Africa. Saudis want to give me $25 million bucks, I'll take it. I don't have a problem. But my problem with the Clinton Foundation, and that the press has not looked at, is how are they spending their money? And they have a lot of it, and we saw what happened with housing in Haiti. How many units got built? Like almost none. And for millions and millions of dollars. So my problem with the Clinton Foundation is how they're spending their money, not where they're getting it from. So you have a meeting with somebody in Washington. I just don't consider that a big issue.
But there was a guarantee.
Do you know that in the 2013-2014, that 2-year period, and the foundation changed its name. It's now called the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation. During those 2 years, the foundation paid for the travel of Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea, wherever they went.
And the wedding.
What?
And the wedding.
Well, separate from the wedding, because I didn't know about it till yesterday. But on the this is in publicly disclosed filings. $31 million spent on the travel of Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea, which means every trip is a private jet, 5-star hotel, limos, the whole bit, paid for by tax-deductible funds, which sort of means we're subsidizing this stuff.
I mean, this is a little thing from my foundation, but, we operate in Africa. We're about ready to give our 10,000th female go-away, and we don't even pay rent because we operate out of somebody's apartment room. There are ways. The Clinton Foundation is this huge, beautiful office space. I just like.
Thrifty Ellen.
Yeah.
I want to thank some people. Tony Petro and Bob Score, along with Chivalry Wu, for photographing, and Bob Score on video tonight. James Scott from Development, thank you Jim, for being here in the early going. Sergio Baca, Nick Oakes, Chris Lisi, Patrick Espinoza, all here tonight to help the students. And we want to thank, once again, our guest. But before we do that, let's tell you what's coming up. When we come back on the 21st, Where We Live, A History of Florida and Daytona Beach. Dr. James Clark from UCF, Mark Lane from the News Journal, and we will talk about this community, what makes it so different. It's for the students, so you know this is where you live, this is the history, and for the general public, a refresher for you. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, that's on the 21st. Our guest, John Leboutillier, Ellen Ratner.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Have a very pleasant evening.